The 10th went forward to meet death instantly, as the 8th had done, the men running as swiftly and as straight as they could at the Turkish rifles. With that regiment went the flower of the youth of Western Australia, sons of the old pioneering families, youngsters, in some cases 2 and 3 from the same home. Men known and popular, the best-loved leaders in sport and work in the West, then rushed straight to their death. Gresley Harper and Wilfred, his younger brother, the latter of whom was last seen running forward like a schoolboy in a foot race, with all the speed he could compass. That's from the official history of Australia in the First War. And that particular description of the attack at the neck and those young men, the one, particularly the boy, ran and disappeared, running as if at a foot race, became the breakthrough for the screenplay. Up to that time, David Williamson and I had experimented. We'd been working probably for a year and a half and not getting anywhere. Historical subject can be so, uninteresting for cinema at times. And here we had it in this official history. And we decided to make our central characters runners.
Come on, boy, loosen them up. That's it. Now on the spot. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. What are your legs?
Springs. Steel springs.
What are they going to do?
Hurl me down the track.
How fast can you run?
As fast as a leopard.
How fast are you going to run?
As fast as a leopard.
Then let's see you do it.
The area is still a military zone, and therefore there's been no farming and no building. The trenches have fallen in, but they're all there, or the whole battlefield is there. It's a remarkable experience to visit it, because the ground is littered with shell casings and with live rounds of ammunition, in fact. And it's extraordinary experience to walk through it. There are very few people there. It's a remote spot. And I was the only person there the 2 or 3 days I wandered about, with a book in hand, following the battlefield and the various actions which were all over the place. I swam in Anzac Cove, beautiful day, and I went underwater. And I'm sure later that stayed in my mind, and I put that underwater scene in where the shrapnel comes down, because it was so beautiful, so peaceful. And I thought, imagine swimming here while death was in the air and your friends were fighting up on the hills. Souvenirs everywhere that the soldiers had dropped, can openers. I remember a boot that the sun had shrunk down to the size of a child's shoe. And this Eno's fruit salt bottle that I picked up. And so I put it in the movie, in a little scene. So you see a shot of Mel Gibson looking at the parcel from home, and he says, "My God, someone even sent me an Eno's fruit salts." But to think of Mel then and Mel now is very difficult, because he was a lad, he was a boy, and full of beans, and really with no sort of grand career ambitions. Otherwise, of course, he wouldn't have been the same man. He was just a working actor, and but a pleasure to work with, and the camera loved him.
The English murdered your own grandfather, hung him with his own belt at the crossroads
5 miles from Dublin.
Look,
Dad, I am not going to fight for the British Empire. I'm going to keep my head down. Learn a trick or two and come back an officer.
He'd done Mad Max, and that's where I first saw him, in fact, at a preview at the State Theatre. And, if you could recognise a star, there he was to be seen in George Miller's film. He was the real thing. So I walked out of the theatre terribly excited, because I had the Gallipoli story well underway and thought he would be wonderful as Frank. And luckily he thought the same thing.
When are they going?
Right about now.
Yes, we did extensive survey of our coastline, had to be close to, obviously, our supply line. We were like a small army ourselves. And we found this location in South Australia that was a very good match for the beach. And I'd taken photographs and so forth of Anzac Cove, which is surprisingly small. And that was one of the things I noted in the war history. There was this feeling of immense confusion on the beach, and tremendous sort of crowding of material and men, which I reproduced in the film. We were mostly outside, as you see as you watch the film, in very, very bouncy locations. Whether the Salt Lake in Australia they cross, or out in the sand dunes of Cairo, and in Cairo itself, the outskirts. But the brothel area and all of that. It was a fish factory, and you could feel you really were on location as we shot those scenes, particularly when the sun heated it up. Well, I wanted a ball scene. I decided I needed one while we were shooting, you know, to just sort of give us a relief from the military scenes and to show something of the life of that period outside of the military life. So the big ball in Cairo was written in, and Pat Lovell, the producer, had to work hard to get the money. It was a very tight budget, as you say. And in a way, I swapped a scene. When the men land at night on Gallipoli, there was a scene where a very expensive scene where they came down the sides of destroyers, and we had the mothball fleet in Sydney Harbour. We were going to shoot there. So I said, I can do without that, you know, if I can have the ball scene. And I'll have the men rowing ashore through a mist, you know, which turned out to anyway be a better idea. I had a score written, but it didn't work out, and I went back to my temp dub music, which we'd cut the film to. And I'm glad, in a way, that it happened like that, because this music had been an inspiration during the making of the film. Music plays a great part in my creative process. I'm sure it does for others. I've hardly met an artist that didn't love music. You know, in the script process, the same thing. I'll play my music. I think it jams the radar. You know, it stops all of that side of your director's life, which has to be dealing with practical problems. But it's critical, of course, to kind of get to the heart of the matter, and I find music does that at the end of the day. We fought in the First World War at Gallipoli. But to go there and to touch it, that brings another level of reality and ultimately of inspiration, which makes it in a way more poignant.